All right. All right. In anything we create in Revit is called an element. And there are three types of building elements. We have model elements, datum elements, and view-specific elements. The model element is a geometrical representation of an assemble. When we create a wall, we're creating a model object. But model objects, there are two types. You have something called a host and another that is called a component. A host is also called a system family. And write this down because this is Revit 101. System family. It's a host, and it's system families are families that shipped out of Revit. They are created within the projects, but you cannot save as a component. You cannot save a system family as a block, for example. Example of system families are any building representation that has a unique boundary. For example, ceilings, floors, walls, roof, topo surfaces. System families cannot be saved as external files. I think that's a basic concept. You can only create it within the context of a project. And then component is everything that you load into the project as an external file. So component families are also called loadable. Loadable family means that they live in a library, in a repository on your server or on the cloud. And then you load them as a component and start using it in the project. An example of component families are doors, windows, furniture, light fixture, mechanical equipment, unitized elements that you bring from shared library into the model. And why is this important? Because you need to understand that if you want to, you can share components as files between different projects. Or if you want to send a family to somebody else, you can email that component and they will be able to load it. And system families cannot be saved as an external file. They only live within a project. But you can copy paste them. For example, if you create a custom partition in one project and you want to utilize it in another project, you cannot save it as a file, but you can copy to the clipboard, jump into the destination project, and then paste it. So system families are, you can copy paste them. Component families, you can save it as an RFA or as a file that is an extension RFI. Here is an example. You know, when I select a wall here, and I look at the type properties is this here. Notice how the type properties report this object as a system family. But when I select a door, for example, and I look at the type properties, it doesn't say system family, it's just a component. This family, I can save it as a file, or it was brought into the project as an RFI. And the way you bring our content into Revit, it's via load family. Load family, it's a way to browse your library of components and bring them into project. You can only bring component families, not system families. So look at the floors. If I hover over the edge of a floor and select it, and look at the type properties, then it's reporting that it's a system family. And this family cannot be exported, cannot be saved as an RFA. You can only copy paste it between projects, but you cannot save it as an RFI. And that's why when companies start standardizing their Revit use, they create something called system family container, which is a project that has all the partitions that you can possibly use in your practice, and it serves as a reference project where users can open the container, grab the floor types or the partition types that they need with the appropriate metadata, and then paste it into the project. And this is a way to distribute across the company wall types. And so in companies, you usually have wall containers, which is a collection of all your partitions. You have stair containers, which is a file that contains all your wall or your stair types, and roof, ceiling, and curtain walls. This is the appropriate way of distribute system families. That makes sense?
Cesar, question, can I ask you, for us landscape architects, our system family, would that be trees and shrubs, or how
No.
would those fit in?
For you, what's relevant is the topo surfaces. It's a system family. But everything else, entourage, plants, trees, cars, people, those are loadable components. Let me show you how you can load components. All right, so to bring the content that is living in your project is available under the family branch of the project browser. This is everything that is available for your use. And this is a combination of system families and component families. To bring things into Revit, the out-of-the-box library now lives in the cloud. In previous version of Revit, we used to ship this content and it was living in your workstation. But now you can load the families directly from a cloud repository. You go to the Insert tab, and then there is a tool called Autodesk Load Autodesk Family. You must be connected into the internet to do that. And this is going to open the Load Family browser, which is the out-of-the-box library from Revit. And here we have loadable families. Notice that you're not going to find here floors. You're not going to find here walls, because walls, roof, and ceilings are system families. You cannot load it into the project. But everything else is a component. And to your point, Patricia, you can have, you can bring furniture, entourage. It's not as expensive as I would like it to be, but you can bring some stuff from here. You can bring like different type of doors, out of the box doors. loadable component. You can search it by keyword. Like if you don't know where things reside under this folder structure, if you're looking for a chair, just type chair, and it gives you all the folders where a chair word is found. Or looking for a table, looking for a printer. I don't know if there's a printer. Yeah, there's a printer. A very old printer, laser printer from the 90s. But this is how you load content. Let's bring a chair, for example. Just look at chair, pick a chair of your choice. And this is a funny one, the On You. I'm sure it's a famous designer. Pick any of your choice, and then just click load. That chair is not living under the furniture category. And here is the chair On You. And I can start using it. That makes sense? So the out-of-the-box library, it's a basic resource, is not extensive. And companies make investment in building their own content that serves their own scheduled purpose and their own type of deliverable type of market. For example, if you're building airports, then you should have an airport library. Using the cloud, it's one way of loading content. If you receive a family or you download a family from the internet, and that family save in the server on your local workstation, you can just click load family, so insert tab, load family, and you can browse your network location for an RFA extension. And this brings the load family dialog box. I install the out-of-the-box library already in my local workstation, and the same content that is in the cloud, it's also mirrored in the local workstation. So the same folder structure that you see here, it's the same one you find in the load out of this family dialog box. All right. That's how we load families.
Cesar,
yes.
Can we assume that the Autodesk family is already loaded on in our software?
The way to check is this one. If you click load family and you see the English Imperial folder with a lot of folders, it means it's been installed by your deployment. If this is empty, that means we need to add it. The deployment needs to add it.
Okay.
Do you have it?
I do, yeah.
Okay, awesome. If this is missing on your end, there is a website that you can go and install it. Let me see if I can find it. Revit 2023 library download. There it is. This is a distributed content pack, and it's localized to different language. So you can just click the executable, download it, and it will place it in the folder that I was showing you earlier. If you're interested to this, I paste the link in the chat panel. This is only if you don't have it preloaded in your local workstation. And there's content in German, Japanese, Australia, Denmark. It's a lot of space if you ship this out of the box, and that's why they decided. I think the English Imperial is the only content that is shipped out of the box, and then the localized content you have to download from this website. All right. There is, I'm going to talk later about, how to search for good sources of content. There are websites that offer content from manufacturers. There are families, loadable families available in public forums. But watch out for them because they can be poorly created. They can have imported geometry from other CAD sources that's going to damage your files. They may be overly detailed for the scope of work and the type of plans that you need. So we'll review them in a little bit. All right, so this is how you load families, component families, and the main thing here is that understand the difference between system families and component families. The other type of elements are datum objects. And datum objects, think of it as a working plane or a reference plane. A view, it's basically a working plane intersecting the model. A section is a working plane intersecting the model. A floor plan, it's a working plane intersecting the model in a horizontal. Grids and levels are also datum objects. They behave as working planes with projections that display in dashed line. That's what a grid is. That's what a level is. Datum objects section the model in the horizontal and the vertical. And then the third part is view-specific elements. These are two-dimensional objects that live on top of a view. If you have an AutoCAD background, then it will be things that you place on paper space, like text nodes, dimension, keynotes, arrowheads, line work, additional line work. And these are called view specific because they only live in a view. If you place like this dimension here, it's only available in this section view. You switch to the other section, this dimension doesn't exist. The same as the tags, reporting parameters of the objects, or the keynote with the arrow leader. They only live in a text. And so these are the three types of building elements in Revit: model elements, datum elements, and view-specific elements. Here is a graphic that displays a more elaborate, a different way of saying the same thing. Remember that hosts are also system families. And remember this because this is in the text in the test next Wednesday. Host is a system family. Example of system families are walls, floors, roof, and ceilings. Model components are loadable components from a library location. Example of those are doors, furniture, light fixtures, windows, stairs. Datum elements are work planes based element that section the model. Grids and levels are datum objects. Reference planes are also datum elements. And then view specific elements can be annotation elements like text node, tags, symbol, dimensions. And then we have detail elements, which are enhanced representations of assemblies that are placed on top of the view. For example, if I have wall section and I'm creating a detail, I don't have to model every single screw or a nail in the model to be visible in the view. I can just put on top of the view, paste on top of the view, a representation of a two-dimensional family of a screw or a profile, and then it will enhance the detail with the two-dimensional element. All right, basic Revit 101. All right, let's talk about parameters. When you select an object in Revit, parameters will be displayed in the property window. Let's take an example. If you select a wall, these are properties of the wall I selected. If you select a tag, these are properties of a tag. Select a curtain wall, these are properties of the curtain wall. When we have a very, very crowded floor plan and things are on top of each other, then it's a little more difficult to select elements. I'll give you an example. Like I am looking at this corner, and when I hover over, the first things Revit select is the exterior curtain wall. But if I want to select like the corner, that specific corner, like I have to move it, be very explicit how you approach it until I select the corner, the mullion, and then it's selected. Then if I want to select that panel, it's difficult to select because it's a nested component inside a curtain wall. And so this is another shortcut you have to use. Tab, keep plus the mouse click, the right mouse click. When you do this, you force Revit to cycle through everything that is underneath the cursor. So if I want to select this panel, hover over on top of it and hit tab. Tab, 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 tab. And you see how it pre-highlights? When anything is pre-highlighted, you do the left click, and now this is selecting the curtain panel. Let's do another example. Like here is a group of stairs, and let's say I want to cycle everything that is underneath the cursor, hover over, and then hit tab. And then notice how, pay attention to this corner right here. And this is going to report information about everything that is cycled underneath. So hover over, tab, that's a stair. Tab, that is a group. Tab, that is an assemble of the stair. Tab, that is a railing. Tab, tab, tab. So everything that is right underneath the cursor can be cycled. And that will allow you to pick just the right thing on a floor plan. That makes sense? Tab, tab, tab.
Cesar, what happens on my screen is that when I press tab, and I do have a Mac keyboard, so that may be it, it asks me if I want to open that view rather than cycling through the selections.
Does Mac has a tab key?
Yeah.
And so when you just hover over and then hit tab, and then it's asking you to open a view.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Search how to do that. Revit tab cycle.
Actually, I figured it out. If I just keep pressing tab without clicking the mouse, it works.
Oh, it worked?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But no mouse use. Anyway,
okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, good to sharing for the other people who's using Mac. You heard that, my Mac users? Just
that's how it works for me. I'm just hovering. I'm not clicking anything on the mouse. If you just hover and tab, it works for me.
Same.
Okay.
No mouse is needed, even if you're not on Mac.
Okay. Just hit tab key. Okay, good. That goes also to the line in a texture. Like, if you hit tab, you can even pick one line in a hatch. And like if you want to pick things underneath here, you hit tab, 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 tab. There's no click involved. So if I mention that, I take that back. Mouse click is not required. All right, so there are times that you're gonna want to select multiple things at a time. This is simple selection. Like if you select one wall and you wanna add things to the wall, just hit the control key and you can continue adding more things to a selection. So I am selecting multiple walls, and as I pick them, Revit keep a tab on the number of items in the lower right corner. That is the total elements that you have selected. You can also see them right here where it says the walls in bracket. And if you pick something by mistake, let's say, for example, I picked this, I can deselect if I click the shift button and click the element I don't need. So shift, deselect an object, control, aggregate new objects to the selection. Basic commands. And then to deselect everything in a click, just hit escape, and that's going to deselect object. Now, there may be times where you want to select all the wall types of a certain type. Doing it manually is a lot of clicks, right? So there's also a right-click way of selecting objects. So if you select one wall and you want to select all the interior walls that are 138 partitions, millimeter partitions, then you can right-click. The right-click menu offer an option called select all instances in the view. You have to select it first and then right-click. Select all instances visible in view, and that's going to select all the wall types that are similar in the view. There's a total of 33 objects, 33 walls of the same type in the entry level one. To deselect, escape, or you can just click the white space outside of the model. You can also select all the walls in the project. So you click on a wall, select all instances in the entire project. And this is not only going to search for the walls in the current view, but it's across the entire model. Oops, cancel. Right click, select all instances in the entire project. And now I have 122 objects of the same type in my selection. And this is useful, for example, if you decide to swap wall types from one to another one. This part of the property window, it's called the type selector. The type selector is used to swap elements of the same category from one type to another type. So if you click if you select a wall and you click the property, the type selector, you have all the things you can swap this by. Like this is a 1 hour partition. If I want to change it, if I want to change all the walls to 2 hour partitions, I just do it in the type selector. And you can do it in a single click. You don't have to like do it manually one by one. The type selector, it's a quick way to update objects. You can also, like during design development, you decided that my doors needs to have a set of single flush door. I need another type. So you right click, select all instances in the entire project, There are 63 doors that I can change in a single click with another type. And here's a list of all the doors that are loaded in the project. Click it and change it as needed. All right. Sometimes you want to enable or disable views for a specific purpose. The view that you have here is like a typical construction plan in design development. But let's say that you want to have a particular view that's going to be used in a PowerPoint presentation, and it's more it's a presentation plan. It doesn't have to be technical, and it's very typical to duplicate views. I'm going to show you now how to duplicate views. We do it via the right click on the project browser. So I am on view 01 entry level, and I want to create a presentation plan. So right click, duplicate view, and notice that there are 3 types of duplicate. The first type will duplicate just the geometry of the view. The second choice is going to duplicate the view and all the view specific objects. So that includes the dimension, the tags, the callouts, the text, is detailing all the detail specific elements. And duplicate as a dependent, it's a way to create a child and a parent relationship. When you create a dependent view, you're creating copies of the floor plan that are exactly mirror images of the parent one. So if you change, and when is this useful? When you have, let's say, an overall plan and you want to have exactly the same copy for enlarged plans as a dependent. And we're going to talk about more dependent views later in the course. But let's duplicate the view. Just duplicate without detailing. Duplicate. Whenever you duplicate a view, you will Revit automatically add a suffix called copy1, and then you have to rename it. So right click on the view, rename it. And I'm going to call this 01 entry level dash presentation plan. So notice that the dimensions and the room tags weren't copied, because this is just a geometrical copy of that. And that I don't have any view specific object. You don't have to do this, but I'm just going to show you. If I open the entry level plan, you don't have to do it. And I just duplicate with detailing. This brings exactly the same element. The view specific elements are part of that. I'm going to delete this. To delete it, just select it and hit delete via right click. All right, so I am in the entry level presentation plan. And I'm going to show you now how to enable or control the visibility of objects here. The way Revit control the visibility of symbols in a floor plan is using the display of categories. And you bring that dialog box using the shortcut VV. So this is a must memorize. VV equal visibility graphics override. You can just type on the fly VB. And that brings the visibility graphic dialog box. And this is a list of all the categories in Revit. And notice that next to each of the, there are architectural categories, structural categories, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And you can selectively switch off categories from the view. And these are view-specific changes. For example, I don't want to show the grid lines. And so the grid lines are annotation under the annotation categories. So you go into the annotation categories here. Notice that everything is visible here. And if you scroll down, you're gonna find the grid row. And the checkbox next to it is telling me that the grids are visible. So disable it and hit OK. Now the grids are off for just this view. Again, type on the fly VB. Go to the annotation categories. Scroll until you find the grids and enable it again. It's going to take some time for you to memorize where the categories are. If you become a Revit user, they may come easily to you. I told you that categories cannot be created, so this list is fixed. This is it. There are times where you don't want to show any annotation. And let's do that very quickly. If you go to the visibility graphic and jump into the annotation category tab, visibility graphic, you can use one of these shortcuts. All will select all the in the project, and none is going to deselect all the categories in the project. But an easy way to enable the visibility of annotation categories is to disable this checkbox. It says show annotation categories. You see the checkbox here. This is going to switch off everything on these dialog box with the power of just one click. So disable show annotation categories and hit OK. Now everything that is annotation, it's off. There's nothing else here. That makes sense? All right, visibility graphic, VB. Annotation category, notice how everything is grayed out here, telling you that everything about this is off. And when this is useful, if you're a consultant, for example, if you're for my landscape architects, if you just want to display in grayscale a reference of the interior of a floor plan level 1 in your landscape plans, and you don't want to display anything of the annotative categories, you can just do this. Switch off all the annotation categories of the architect, and you just have a reference plan there. All right. Let me talk more about switch to the model categories, and you're going to have this tabular display of different visibility graphic properties. So, okay, let me go back here and cancel here. Let's talk about line weights and how things are represented in Revit. Categories in Revit are associated with a specific graphic properties, and that includes the line weight when you cut it, the line weight when it's projected, and the default material when it's rendered. And all those settings are global settings that are assigned via object style. Object styles is a dialog box that control the global visibility of elements by category. So you find them under the Manage tab, and then under the Settings panel, you find Object Styles. It has this icon that has like a 4 square with a little pencil. This is going to bring a dialog box that's very similar to Visibility Graphic, but these are your project settings on Visibility Graphic. This is display how a category is rendered in projection and cut, what is the line color, what is the line pattern, and what is the default material. Let's look at, for example, the grid lines. So under the annotation object, if you scroll down and look at the grid category, grid head, actually no, that's the grid lines have, it's a combination of a grid head and a line style. So here I can only control the grid head. I'm going to talk later how to control line styles. But let's look at another example. Let's look at the walls. So model object, and if you scroll down and look at the walls, when you look at wall in projection, will be printed in line weight number 1. When you cut it via work plane, either at the horizontal or the vertical, the line weight is going to be number 3. And the range of values is from 1 to 16, where 1 is the thinnest and 16 is very, very bold. There is a table of actual thicknesses that I'll show you shortly. But this is basically the global settings for everything in Revit. Color is usually what you see is what you get. So for the most part, everything is going to be black. The line pattern, can be associated as well as part of the category. And there's even a material associated with that.
Sorry, how did you get to the object styles again?
So to the Manage
Oh,
tab,
manage. Mm-hmm.
and then Object Styles under Settings.
Thank you.
Okay, so when an object is when objects in view, when I have a view, by default, it's going to display the properties by category. So the default line weight is by category. And by category means by as defined by object styles. This is the default line weight of an object. So when the things that you're looking, I click escape. When the things you're looking in a view, it's by default represented on a line weight by object styles. It's by category. So I'm going to bring now the visibility graphic again, like VB, and explain this dialog box. So in here, I have a way to provide an override that is view specific for certain objects in the view. So by default, everything is by category, And you see all these cells are empty, meaning that there are no overrides for projection and cut patterns. Well, let's try to override something in the view. So, for example, let's look at these columns. These are part of the structure. If you want to find what category is something, you just select it, and the category is going to be listed right here under the property window. That is what the category is. Or you can just hover over and let the display tell you what it is. The category is structural columns. It's the first piece of information, the 3-tier tooltip. All right, so if I want all the columns to have like a black override, I want all the columns, this is a presentation floor plan, and I need the columns to have a black shade, because this is going to be part of a magazine, for example. I don't want to change the object styles of it because it's going to change it across the entire project. So I'm going to do a visibility graphic override. So you go to VV, visibility graphic, VV. Go to the structural column category, structural column, and apply an override. Apply an override that is a black solid pattern for the object when it's cut by a working plane. So what I'm going to override is the cut pattern override. Cut because it's cut by my cutting plane in floor plan, which is 4 feet above finish level. It's not a projection, it's just a cut plane. And so I'm going to apply an override, and I'm going to say, for this particular view, give me a foreground pattern that is solid fill and that is black. So I am applying a graphic override for the columns for this particular view. Again, VV, search structural columns and find the cut pattern override. Then hit OK. Notice how now it's displaying a cell on one side is the foreground pattern and the other one is the background pattern. You can combine patterns. Like you can have, for example, a hatch with a red override, red solid. So I hit apply here, hit OK, hit OK, hit OK. And now all my columns in the project have this black representation, and it's just via visibility graphic. Does that make sense? And it's just for this view. If I go to the furniture layout, my columns are still by default, which is by object style. All right, now I'm going to ask one of you, look at this floor. This floor is displaying a concrete hatch. What do I do to switch off this pattern for this particular view? I'm going to pick you, Jess.
All right. Let's see. Let's go to VV.
Yeah, you tell me. I'll do what you tell me.
Yeah. Open up the visibility window. And I'm going to look for, in model categories, floors, floor materials. That a category?
You're good. That's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Cool. And then for projection surface.
Correct. This column. Yeah.
Go to patterns.
Yes.
Override and unclick the visibility for foreground and background. I don't know if it has a background that's visible.
Lovely. You got
And then hit OK.
perfect. You got
Right.
5 stars. Yeah.
Thank
So for this particular view, I disabled the visibility of the hatch pattern in projection because this is a projection view. This is the floors aren't being cut by the cut plane, and so I no longer have the hatch, right? Okay, I'm going to ask the same question. Maybe you, Jim, help me here. How do I apply a black shadow to the walls? And just guide me,
Black shadow.
like a
Yeah,
black
I'm gonna stumble through it. Let's try the VV again.
visibility graphic. Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't pop up for me on the first try. So hold on. There we go. So walls.
Go to the walls category. Yeah.
And you're asking me to do what
Oh.
with a shadow?
We want to have a black solid shadow on the walls.
Mhm.
Like a poche?
For sure. Yeah.
Oh, a poche. Okay, so that would be a cut and a pattern. So I'm going to go to pattern and hit override. And then it stays visible. And then for pattern, I'm just going to pick solid fill, right? And I'm going to black. It says black. Oh, pick a color. I'll make it blue just for fun.
All right.
So let's see if it worked. Yeah, so my walls are blue.
Bingo. Got it.
That's pretty cool.
Now, all the walls just for this particular views are blue here. And yeah, this is going to serve some of my presentation style. And now you can see how you can start adjusting things as needed. One last thing, and I'm going to ask Patricia. This is the floor, and I want the floor to be displayed in gray. Guide me and tell me how to do it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. When you go to the object styles through manage.
Object
Manage.
styles is global, so
Oh,
it has to be visibility graphic. BV.
BB. Okay. And then you pick floor,
Correct.
right? And then from floors, you go to patterns, projection.
The projection tab, yeah.
Yeah, on the projection tab,
Which column?
patterns.
Patterns is for the hatch. And then the boundaries of the elements are underlined.
But wouldn't it be a hat if you're doing the whole floor?
Oh, it's not a poche, it's just the line weight of the boundary.
Oh, just the edge. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back. So then it wouldn't be the patterns, it would be line,
Line.
override.
Correct. And then override, yeah.
And then select the cut. What do we want the line to be? What again? Sorry.
Gray. Gray.
Okay, so color.
Color.
Select there and pick gray. Okay.
All right.
And okay.
That's it. When it says no override, that means it will inherit what is in object style, which is the global setting. And the global setting is saying that the pattern is continuous, so there's no need to define any pattern here. Hit OK, here apply, hit OK. Now every floor for this view has a gray color. All right, so I think you guys are getting it. This is the way you calibrate the line weight of elements in a view. And what's more beautiful is that this can be saved as a view template. And if you have multiple floors, you don't have to. I'm going to do this very quickly, but I'm going to show it when we talk about construction plans later.
Sorry, do you mind showing that floor again? My my line disappeared.
Okay, you can hit undo, which is right here. The arrow turn to the left. So you go visibility graphics, BV again. Then search for floor.
Yeah.
In the projection line column, hit the cell that says override. And just change the color. I picked this gray.
Yeah, I did that too.
Maybe it's very light. Maybe try, let's do red, for example. And the other thing, yeah. Hit apply, hit OK.
Okay, that worked. Yeah, maybe my gray was just too pale.
It was very pale. It's hard to see on the screen. In fact, you can apply a different hatch if needed. But you can spend time calibrating the graphic quality of a view, depending on what is the purpose of the construction documentation, and then you can create a template using these settings. Create a template from this view, and I'm going to call it presentation template. And now the graphic properties of these particular view are saved as a template. And let's say I'm in the 3rd floor and I want to apply the same settings. I duplicate the view. And instead of spending all this time calibrating it, I just apply the view template, the presentation template. And it will apply exactly the same settings from floor level 1 to the floor level 3. If there are things that you need to calibrate, then you just change the template and then it will change it. Let's say, for example, I go to manage view template and I say, okay, the presentation for the presentation template, I don't want the line weights to be of the floors to be red, but I want them to be green. You just change the template once. And then the template is equally applied to the 3rd floor and to the 1st floor. Oh, but I need to apply it. I didn't apply it to the 1st floor. Apply presentation template. Now the template, it serves as a control mechanism of how your floor plans needs to look. And so what often fails in offices, in particular, when you complain to your user, why is this floor different from this one? There are 2 floor plans and the values are different. It's because of lack of proper view templates. And
can you go over one more time how to change the view template?
yeah, we're going to go over this in more detail later, but quickly, what you do is when you want to save this as a template, go to view templates and you hit create templates from current view. So it's under the view tab. The first icon is view template, and then there is a drop down list that is called create template from current view. And then give it a name, presentation floor plan. And that's going to store the graphic values of the line weight, color, and pattern for this particular view and make it available for other views. Now, if you want to apply that in another floor, I want to delete this view, which I did before. Like I'm switching to the 3rd floor, and you can right-click on the 3rd floor and duplicate it so that I don't impact the original view. This is the presentation floor level 3. And instead of doing this manually, apply the template. So go to the view templates and then say apply template to the view. In this list, you have a filter list of view template that you can apply to the current view. Here's my presentation template, and just hit OK. And we'll transfer the template settings from one plan to another. Did that help, Ruth? Or who asked? It was you, Ruth.
I asked Lauren, but no, my question was after you've made the template, how do you edit it?
Oh, how to edit it. So go to view template and hit manage view template. And then hit the appropriate name. And this is exactly the same as visibility graphics. You see VG says here, it's the same visibility graphic override. This is like the tab on VV. And I say, okay, I'm going to change the poche of the walls from blue to green in the template. So you go to visibility graphic model, scroll down to the floor, and the cut pattern for the walls, not floor. The cut pattern of the walls, I'm going to change it from blue to green. And I'm changing here the template. I'm not changing the view. But because the template is already applied to the view, it's gonna change it to hit OK. View template is updated. It's gonna propagate the changes to every view that has a template applied. Hit OK. I don't think I have applied that template. Oh, it did. Why didn't go? Visibility graphic, walls. Oh, it didn't register. Okay. 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 There you go. So I changed the template, and the template, we change it everywhere where the template is applied. Apply template.
And Cesar, how do you apply the template?
Open the view, and then on view templates, click apply template to current view.
Thank you.
All right. That's probably too much for the first class, but I think you get it. I think getting control on how things are represented in Revit is one of the fundamental things to get things properly displayed in construction documentation. All right, let's talk about units. Let's change the unit of this. I think I told you that out of the box, this is in metrics, but I can change the units to fit in inches so that dimensions and sizes show accordingly to this region. The unit is a setting under the Manage tab. And then you go to, there's a unit tool, which is like a calculator with 2 zeros in the back. Project units, shortcuts is UN. You might receive these reminders from time to time. Revit, and I'm going to write this down. Revit does not autosave. It's not going to autosave. So if you did not save manually, there's no way to recover this. This is unlike AutoCAD. I think AutoCAD has autosave, but Revit does not autosave. But Revit does auto save reminders. And these reminders are by default every half an hour, I believe, or every hour. You can set the cadence on how often you want to be reminded. And so from time to time, you're going to get this dialog box saying you haven't saved. You can ignore by hitting cancel, or just hit save. It doesn't take a lot of effort. If that really bothers you, you can go to File, Options, and you see where it says Notification. It says every 30 minutes you're gonna get a save reminder or a sync with central reminder. It's good to save. If you don't save, you lose the work. If something happened, like if this crash or you quit unexpectedly. All right, so I was gonna, why did I say so this is how you save. I'm gonna save right now. And oh, the units, that's where we are, unit. So we were on project units, and this is the project unit dialog box, manage tab, settings, and look for the icon that's like a calculator with 2 zeros. So let's change everything that looks like meter or centimeters. The areas I want to report square feet. For distances, I want to report feet. For length, and dimensions are part of the length. It's feet and fractional inches. And this is a global setting. So globally, you can direct Revit to make dimensions at a half an inch. I really recommend go as high as you can. Revit doesn't lie. So the more you can display the accuracy of the model element, the more it is. In some companies, they go all to 1 to 56. I think at least 1/8 of an inch. Then the rest can stay as it is. Mass density is not needed. This is maybe for analysis. We don't care less about that. But I make changes here, hit OK. And now this is feet in inches. There's no need to do scale factors or multiply it by factor in order to get it right to the right unit. Now, when I make a dimension, remember I say 1/8 of an inch accuracy. So by default, oh, let me switch to a different level, entry level. By default, some of these dimensions are going to show with increments of 1/8 of an inch. There you go. If you raise the incremental, it can go to 256. All right. There are things. Let's talk a little bit about the selection controls. Some of the things here. There are things in Revit or things in the model that should not be moved by anyone because those are sacred elements. Can anybody give me an example of things that you should not move? Jim?
Grid lines.
Yes, grid lines are set up by structural. They should not be moved. And in Revit, it's so easy to inadvertently shift things. Columns is another one that shouldn't move. So if I want to prevent myself from moving certain things, I should pin them. So when an object is pinned, it's fixed in space, and it requires deliberately effort to unpin it and move it. So if you select grid line number A and I pin it, pin is available in the modify tab. It will be this. It's a pin icon. When something is pinned, it cannot be moved. You see, I'm dragging it out or in, and if I use the move command, it will give me this warning: elements cannot be moved because they are pinned. So you can select all the grids in the project and pin them in a single operation. And I show you how to select all elements via right click. So I'm going to select one grid, right click, select all instances in the entire project. This is going to select all the grids across all the project. I have a total of 19 grids in my selection, and I'm going to pin them. Pin. It's available in the contextual tab. And notice that there is a little pin icon display at the center of each of the grid. And when this is pinned, no one can move it. You have to have to explicitly unpin it to move the grid. Other things that are very easy to move are floors, because if you're working in the middle of a floor, you select this floor and suddenly the floor is out of place. You want to avoid that. Select the floor, pin it. Now, even if you try to drag it out, you won't be able to. All right, but in the selection controls, you can still select the grid. Now, the selection control in the lower right corner, it has this little pin. So these enable or disable the user ability to select pin object. So I'm going to disable the user ability to pick pin objects. And now these grids are not even selectable because they are pinned. And they're just reference things that are underneath the project. No one can touch it, no one can select it. The selection controls are ways to prevent users from doing dumb stuff. Siobhan, you have a question?
Yeah, so for the grids, I did notice that there is kind of this lock symbol. What's the difference between the pin and the lock symbol?
Yeah, I think you're talking about the alignment controls. So this lock, it's a constraint associated with this blue dash line, which is telling Revit that for this particular view, all the grids share the same alignment. And that constraint is locked. So if I stretch, I have to unpin it. But if I stretch the size of the extent of the grid to be shorter, all of them are going to move at the same time. So this lock is a lock alignment. We're not going to talk about that more next class, but that's what it means. And that's different from the pin. Pin is just fixing something in place. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
All right, so these enable or disable user ability to select pin objects. The other one is this one, the one that is right next to it, which is enable or disable the user ability to select element by clicking the face. So if you disable that, for example, notice how if you have a red X on top of it, notice that I click in the middle of an object, and then I can select that object. If I disable it, this is not working. I am not supposed to be able to select. Oh, you know what? It's because I have this hatch. And so the hatch is selectable. Well, let's go to the presentation plan that we were working earlier. Okay, this doesn't have a hatch. Notice that I have no way to select the floor here. I'm not selecting it because I disabled the user ability to select element by face. But then if I select it, then yes, now I just click in the middle of a floor and it's selectable. For the most part, I recommend this control to be enabled maybe only in elevations when you are like working in elevation, but in a floor plan, disable the user ability to select things by click, because it's very easy to move and displace elements in a floor plan. So these are pin objects. The first one is disable the user ability to select consultant links. And this is super critical. If you receive a model from a structural and mechanical and it's aligned with your architectural plan, disable the user ability to select links. And that's going to prevent inadvertent movements or shift in the models. So yeah, the next one is underlay, but we're going to cover that in a later. But these are ways to save you from yourself, save you from making mistakes. That's what the view controls are. All right. Last few things. Let's switch to a 3D view, and I only have like a couple of minutes to do this. Go to the little house in the upper left side. This is a 3D view. I'm going to show you. I mean, this is the navigation cube, and you can use it to switch axonometric views. Just hover over the corner of this box, and this box is available in all Autodesk products. You can also switch to a 3-dimensional top view, and if you hit these arrows, you can actually look at the project north, project east. You can also use this arrows to turn around the project like 90 degrees. I'm going to return to the southwest corner. And let me show you the orbit command. We use it all the time. It's going to take a couple of efforts to get this right. So you click Shift plus the mouse wheel. So orbit equals Shift plus mouse wheel. And you have to press them at the same time. Hit Shift mouse wheel and look at the cursor turn into this double arrow. The pivot point is the center of the entire geometry, and this is probably a more intuitive way of rotating the project. You can also pivot or orbit an object by selecting an element. For example, I want these tree to be the pivot center of the rotation. So select the tree and click Shift mouse wheel. And now the tree is the center of the universe. Everything rotates around the pivot point. Select the roof, for example, and hit Shift mouse wheel. The center, the centroid of the roof is now the geometrical center of the universe. I'm going to select this column here at the front end. Shift mouse wheel. The column is the center of the world. All right, and then in a 3D environment, it's also useful. You know, this is a 3D axonometric, but it's difficult to understand what's happening in the first floor, for example, because everything is aggregated. So I'm going to make a duplicate copy of the 3D view. So the name of the view is 3D bracket. That's the default Axon view. In the project browser, right click on that 3D view and duplicate it. I don't want to change the original one. This is called 3D bracket copy. I'm going to rename it via right click and make it a working view. And this is good practice in Revit. And I'm going to type it here, best practice. Create your own working views. A working view, it's a view that is dedicated for your use. When we are in the context of work sharing, everybody has access to all these views. And a working view has the visibility graphics that you need to do your own task. And you don't want anyone to interfere with that. Whether you're doing a floor plan, a furniture plan, anything, make a copy of the view and put your initials next to it. And this is a way to let everybody know that this is your view. Don't mess with that because you're in the middle of executing a task. And I'm going to call this 3D Caesar. Rename all this 3D Axle dash Caesar. This view is not going to be used for technical drawings. I'm going to modify it to suit my own task. All right, this copy of a 3D Axle, I'm going to use the vertical settings of each of the floor plans to create axles. And so one of the options inside Revit is the ability to create axles associated with levels. And so if you hover over the navigation bar and right click, you can orient to view the 3D view to a specific floor plan. So I want to say, I want the 3D view of the floor plan level 1, entry level. Again, hover over the box, right click, and say orient to view floor plans, entry level. And when Revit does, it crops the view to the vertical extent of level 1. And now I have a very nice display of level 1 that I can work in 3D. So I could work both in floor plan, I can work in 3D, and you have a sense of what is the appropriate course of action when you're modeling. You can model here in 3D, you can model in a floor plan, and look at it at the same time. You want to shift floors? Cool, just right click on the cube, orient to view, floor plan, go to floor plan level 2. And again, this is going to now display the vertical extent of the floor plan level 2, work alongside your floor plan. This is your working plan. It can even become a presentation view if you turn the shadows. Shadows on, shadows off. Again, orient to view. You can also orient to view to a section. And this is going to give you a 3D section. So if you're creating sections and you want to understand the content of the section, orient to view to the sections remains there. Whoop. And now this is a section. And this is exactly the projection section that is here. So instead of being two-dimensional representation, it's actually in 3D. And I'm going to break here. So save your file. And I think I cover a lot of the navigation. I mean, zoom in, zoom out, orbit, switch things on and off. we need that front end understanding how to manipulate things in Revit before we can get started on a project. So next class, next Monday, we're going to start a project from scratch. We're going to start with the levels and then the grids and then the columns, and focus on the model elements like walls, curtain walls, etc. So save it, close your project, and I'm going to stop the recording. The recording is now available. If you fall behind, feel free to review it. Stop